faithfulness and for his mercy towards us, for his keeping care and his tender mercies. We are almost at the end of another year, and truly, God has been good to us in spite of the many battles, in spite of the many obstacles and the adversities that we have to encounter even on a day-by-day basis. But God has been truly good to us. And as people of God this morning, let us recognize that there is none like him. As we just sang that song a while ago, there is none like him. No one else can touch my heart like you do. Or I might turn to all this world, but there is none like him. And so, this morning as we come, we want to give God thanks for his mercies and his enduring grace towards us. Because even a time like this, so many people have passed away, but we are still on the land of the living. We are still on the land where we can make all our wrongs right. And we can say, God, help me to give me a strength to go another day. And because of that, we want to give God thanks. You know, even those who are coming in from the cold, we want to say welcome to you in the name of the Lord. Now, in 1 Peter chapter 4 and verse 12, 1 Peter chapter 4 and verse 12, it says that, Beloved, think it not strange for the fiery trials which is near there to try you, as if some strange thing has happened to you. 1 Peter chapter 4 and verse 12. I'm reading from the New International Version. It said, Beloved, be not surprised at the painful trial you're suffering, as though some strange things were happening to you. But rejoice that you are participators in the sufferings of Christ, so that you may be overjoyed when his glory shall be revealed. And as you look back in this year, 2024, all of us, we can say that there are some times it has been difficult for us. We have had adversities, we have had trials, we have all sorts of difficulties. Some of us, we have suffered the loss of loved ones. Some of us, we have suffered sicknesses and all sorts of difficulties. But these are the trials that come to try us. And so, I want to bear with this morning as a topic for our morning's contemplation. We have to understand that as we are coming towards the end of the year, and we are looking towards a new year, it's a time when we're going to look back on what has happened to us in 2024. And we look forward to what is going to happen to us in 2025. And so, as we finish this year, 2024, I want to take for our topic this morning, finishing strong. Finishing strong. That is the topic that I want to look at this morning. And as we look at this topic this morning, we're going to look at the life of three individuals this morning. But first of all, we're going to look at Ruth and Naomi. Ruth and Naomi. Now, Naomi was from the land of Israel, and she was married to a man by the name of Elimelech. But there was a famine in Israel, so the family led by Elimelech decided to go to another country by the name of Moab. And while they were in Moab, Naomi had two sons by the name of Mahlon and Chilion. And while they were there, Mahlon and Chilion became young men, and they took themselves two women as wives in the land of Moab. And so they didn't have any children. But first of all, Naomi suffered the death of her husband, Elimelech. He died there. And then afterwards, her two sons, Mahlon and Chilion, also died. And then after about 10 years, she decided that she's going to go back to the land of Israel, her land. And her two daughter-in-laws, Ruth and Ophrah, they decided to go along with her. But after they reached partway on the journey, Naomi said to them that they should turn back and go back to their country. But when we look in Ruth chapter 1, especially in verse 17, where I don't know if children still memorize that verse, but I remembered when I was a student at Denver Primary School in grade 6, I remember that verse, we had to memorize that verse, where it says that, where Ruth said unto Naomi, entreat me not to leave thee, or to return from following after thee. For where thou goest, I will go, and where thou lodgest, I will lodge. Thy people shall be my people, and thy God, my God. I learned that right in Denver Primary School, primary school. And the Lord be also to me. And so, Ophrah, she decided that she's going to go back. But Ruth decided that she's going to go with her mother-in-law, because she decided that she's not going to go back to the land of idolatry, the land where she's from. And so, when they went back to Israel, Naomi was disappointed with God, because Naomi said when the people recognized that Naomi was back, she said that I left my land filled, but I came back empty. Her husband had died, her two sons had died, and so she was very bitter and very disappointed with God. And as people of God, you might be praying about something, you might be looking to God for something, and it seems as if nothing is happening. And sometimes we want to feel that we are disappointed, become disappointed with God. But we as the people of God, we have to recognize that in spite of the difficulties, in spite of the disappointments, we have to finish strongly. We have to finish strongly, because Ruth and Naomi, when they went back to the land of Israel, they went back at the right time, because it was at the time when the famine was almost broken. And so they started having a harvest in the land of Israel. And at one point, Ruth, she started working in the field of a rich farmer, a man by the name of Boaz. Now, in those days, Boaz, he was related to the husband of Naomi. And in those days, when the husband would die, and if the husband would leave any property or anything like that, the next near relative or the next of kin would inherit that property. And as a result of that, Elimelech had some land there, and Boaz, he inherited that land. But Boaz, his first wife had also died. And when his first wife died, Ruth decided that she's going to work in the vineyard. And when you look in Ruth chapter 2, look at in Ruth chapter 2, says that, now Naomi had a relative on her husband's side from the clan of Elimelech, a man of standing whose name was Boaz. And when it says a man of standing, it means that he was a man of substance. He was a rich man. And Ruth the Moabitess said to Naomi, let me go to the fields and pick up the leftover grain behind anyone in whose eyes I find favor. And Naomi said to her, go ahead, my daughter. So she went out and began to glean in the fields behind the harvest. And as it turned out, she found herself working in a field belonging to Boaz, who was from the clan of Elimelech. In other words, he was from the family of Elimelech. And then Boaz arrived from Bethlehem and greeted the harvesters. "The Lord be with you. The Lord bless you," they called back. Then Boaz asked the supervisor of his harvesters, "Whose young woman is that?" The foreman, the supervisor, replied, "She is from Moab. She is the Moabitess who came back from Moab with Naomi." She said, "Please let me glean and gather among the sheaves behind the harvesters." She went into the field and worked steadily from morning till now, except for a short break in the shelter. So Boaz said to Ruth, "My daughter, listen to me. Do not go and glean in any other field. Don't go away from here. Stay here with my servant girls. Watch in the field where the men are harvesting. Follow along after the girls. I have told the men not to touch you, and whenever you are thirsty, go and get a drink of water from the jars the men had filled." At this she bowed down with her face to the ground. She exclaimed, "Why have I found such favor in your eyes that you notice me as a foreigner?" Boaz replied, "I have told you all about what you have done for your mother-in-law since the death of your husband, how he left your father and mother and your homeland and come to live with a people you did not know before. May the Lord bless you for what you have done. May you be richly rewarded by the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to take refuge." And so Naomi sent Ruth to glean, in other words, to take up what has been left behind in the fields. And because of that, she found favor in the eyes of God. Now, Ruth, she was from a strange land. And when I say she was from a strange land, her people did not worship the God of Israel. But she had a determination that she's going to follow with her mother-in-law, because she recognized that something different was there in the land of Egypt. And she decided that she's not going to go back to the strange or foreign land. As they just sang a while ago, no foreign God can take your place. No foreign God can take your place. It is you that I love. And she recognized that although they served idols in the land of Moab, she was determined to finish strongly. She was determined that she's not going to go back to the land of idols. She was determined that she's going to follow Naomi. And Naomi, she came back very disappointed with God. She might be bitter and angry because, as she said, that she left filled. She was full when she went out, but she came back empty. She went to better her life, but instead of better, things got worse for her. And she wondered, she was at her wit's end. You know, how can I recover from all of that? And as people of God this morning, when you look back at this year, it was maybe a difficult year for you. And you wonder, God, are you going to turn around my situation? Are you going to do something for me? But Ruth and Naomi was determined that they are going to finish strongly. In spite of all the difficulties, in spite of all the adversities, in spite of all the disappointments, in spite of all the things not going their way. And as people of God, when you look back at this year, when you look back at 2024, many things might not have gone right for you. But you have determined in your heart that you're going to go after the Lord. As the psalmist David says, "One thing have I desired of the Lord, and that will I seek after, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord for in all the days of my life, and behold the beauty of the Lord and inquire in his temple. You might be looking back and you said, boy, things have not gone down well for me. You have been praying about situations in your life, and it seems that nothing is happening. You see, it seems as if that everything is getting worse and worse. But you have to know in whom you believe. Naomi knew in whom she believed, and she was determined to finish strongly. She sent Ruth out in the field, and God granted her favor when she met the owner of the field. She met Boaz, and Boaz asked, who was this woman? And she said that she was the daughter of Naomi. And Boaz said to all his workers, when you see her in the field, do not stop her. Let me tell you this, brethren, as I speak to my own self, sometimes you might be wondering, when is God going to come through for me? But you might be wondering, God, I've been seeking your face and nothing is happening. But you have the purpose and determined in your heart that I am going to finish strongly. I am going to finish this year strongly. Even when it seems as if nothing is happening. When it seems as if that, nothing is going on for me. But you have the purpose in your heart, like Ruth and Naomi, to finish strongly. And when we look in chapter 4 of Ruth chapter 4 says that, before we read Ruth chapter 4, Ruth in chapter 3, where Boaz, he went to sleep at that night. And when he lay down, Ruth came and lay beside him down at his feet. And when he woke up, he realized that it was Ruth. And he said to her, in Ruth chapter 3, says that, although it is true that I am your near of king, there is a kinsman redeemer nearer than I. Stay here for the night, and in the morning he wants to redeem good. Let him redeem. But if he's not willing, as surely as the Lord lives, I will do it. Lie here till morning. This was Boaz speaking unto Ruth. So she lay at his feet until morning, but got up before anyone could recognize. And he said, do not let it be known that a woman came to the threshing floor. He said to her, bring the shawl you are wearing and hold it out. When she did so, he poured 6 measures of barley and put it on her, and he went back to town. And eventually, Ruth came to her mother-in-law, and her mother Naomi said, how did it go? And Ruth told her everything that Boaz had done for her, and had it. He gave me these 6 measures of barley, saying, don't go back to your mother-in-law empty-handed. And Naomi said, wait, my daughter, until you find out what happened, for the man will not rest until the matter is settled. Here, God started pouring out his favor on Ruth. God gave Ruth favor in the eyes of Boaz. And eventually, it so happened that Boaz ended up marrying Ruth, as we in chapter 4 there, where Boaz married Ruth. And it so happened that they had a son. And he grew up, and this man had another son, and this man, he came to be the father of David. Ruth had a son by the name of Obed. Obed had a son by the name of Jesse. And Jesse became the father of David. So Ruth became the great-grandmother of David. And Ruth became in the line of Jesus Christ. So, brethren, as people of God, you might have gone through a difficult time in 2024. You have gone through difficulties. It might seem as if that there was no way out. But you as the people of God, let me tell you this morning that you have to finish the year strongly, because God is going to open up doors for you. Just as he opened up a door for Ruth, she was able to marry this rich man by the name of Boaz. And not only married Boaz, but she became the great-grandmother of David, who was the king of Israel. See what line that God can do for you. As we just sang a while ago, nothing, absolutely nothing is impossible with God. Sometimes things seem impossible. Nothing is working out for you. Nothing seems to be going on for you. And you say to wonder, God, what is happening? Is there anything happening for me? Nothing seems to be happening for me. And you wonder, when is God going to come through for you? But Ruth and Naomi, they never gave up on God. Even when Naomi was bitter, she was angry, she was disappointed with God, but she never gave up on God. This morning, you might be feeling so discouraged. This morning, you might be feeling so disappointed. You have been asking the Lord for something, and you wonder, when is your time going to come true? You have been praying about a matter, even for more than a year now, and you wonder when it is going to come true for you. But let me tell you, you have to finish strong this morning. Finish strong this morning, because it is time that we recognize that God is going to come true for you. And because he came true for Ruth, he came true for Naomi. Even in her old age, he came true for Naomi. Even last week when we were looking at the scripture, where Zachariah and Elizabeth, they thought that they had passed the time of childbearing. But when the angel came to Elizabeth and told her that she's going to have a son, she laughed. She thought that it was impossible. But with God, all things are possible. Nothing is too big for God. Sometimes your situation looks so impossible. Sometimes it seems as if that there is no end to it. But you have to recognize that nothing, absolutely nothing, is impossible with God. You know, we live in an age and a time where everybody, they want things to happen at the snap of a finger. Nobody wants to wait again, because waiting is not so pleasant. Nobody likes to wait. But let me tell you that God's timetable is not our timetable. You know, it was even as we were looking at in Sunday school this morning, when Jesus Christ came, Jesus Christ had to wait at the age for 30 years before he started his ministry. He did not start his ministry until he was 30 years of age. When you look at even men of God throughout the scriptures, they had to go through a period of waiting. They had to listen and they had to wait on the Lord. As the psalmist said, wait on the Lord. Be of good courage, and he will strengthen our heart. Wait, I say, on the Lord. And you know, even at times that you are waiting, you have to finish strongly. Naomi recognized that although she was in a foreign land, and although she came back, because at one point, when she came back, she said to her brethren, do not call me Naomi, but call me Mara, because the Lord has dealt with me bitterly. In chapter 2 there, where, chapter 1 there says that in verse 20, do not call me Naomi, she told them. Call me Mara, because the Almighty has made my life very bitter. I went away full, and the Lord brought me back empty. Why call me Naomi? The Lord has afflicted me. The Almighty brought misfortune upon me. And even in her bitter and resentful state, God still was there for Naomi. Nothing is too hard for God. You might be angry. You might be wondering, God, when are you going to come through for me? When are you going to answer my prayer? When are you going to turn around my situation? When, Lord? When something is going to happen for me? And you might be wondering, it is no use. We might give up. You know, that is one of the problems that we have in our world today. Every single one of us, we have to go through difficult times. We have to go through times of adversities. We have to go through times where nothing seems to be working out for us. And that is a season where it is going to make us or to break us. Because the trials, they come to refine our lives. There are things in our lives that we have to put off. Things in our lives that we have to get rid of. And the trials can only come to refine us. You know, it was only this morning I was reading something, and it says that when they are preparing gold, it has to go through a process of refinement. And it does not come overnight. It does not come in a split second. They have to refine gold over a period of time. And so, people of God, let us recognize that if God is going to refine us, we have to wait on the Lord. As we look, let us look in Ruth chapter 4. Where? Says that, so in verse 8, so the kinsman redeemer said to Boaz, bite yourself, and he removed his sandal. Then Boaz announced to the elders and all the people, today you are witnesses that I have bought from Naomi all the property of Elimelech, Kilion, and Mahlon. I have also acquired Ruth, the Moabitess, Mahlon's widow, as my wife, in order to maintain the name of her dead with this property. So this was his name, so that his name will not disappear from among his family. Then all the elders and all those at the gate said, we are witnesses. May the Lord make this woman who is coming into your home like Rachel and Leah, who built up the house of Israel. And so we find where Boaz, he went before the elders, the men of Israel, and said to them that I am going to acquire the property that Elimelech had left, that Ruth had left, and I'm going to also take Ruth as my wife. That is the favor of God. That is the unimaginable favor of God. Sometimes, you know, as people of God, sometimes when we go through some difficult times and we wonder, God, are you going to come through for me? But sometimes God comes with some uncommon favor in our lives. Sometimes God comes out in a way that we didn't even expect it to work out that way. So it means that we have to finish strongly. It means we have to finish strong because God is going to come through for you. God is going to come through for us, even when it seems that nothing is happening. Because it is natural thing that you become angry, you can become bitter, you become resentful when things are not working out for you. Just like Naomi did. But as the scripture that was said this morning, says that be anxious for nothing, but by prayer and by supplication, let your requests be made known unto God. And so, Ruth and Naomi, they gave back their barrenness to God, and Ruth reaped a bountiful harvest. She finished strongly, and because of that, she was able to reap a bountiful harvest. Brethren, as people of God, let us recognize that we must finish strongly. As you look back on this year, 2024, it might not have been a good year for you. It might not have been the best year for you. But purpose in your heart that you're going to finish strongly. Even when things are seeming so impossible, purpose in your heart that you're going to finish strongly. And Ruth purpose in her heart that she was going to finish strongly, even when she said to Naomi that I am not going to go back into my land of Moab. She said, entreat me not to leave thee, nor to return from following after thee. For where thou goest, I will go. Where thou lodgest, I will lodge. Thy people shall be my people, and thy God, my God. And so, because of that determination, she was able to reap a bountiful harvest. And so, as people of God, let me say that this morning, in spite of the situation, in spite of what is happening in your life, purpose in your heart that you're going to finish strongly because you're going to reap a bountiful harvest. And and even another person I want to look at this morning, and it is the life of Joseph. We all know about the story of Joseph, where when he was born to Jacob, and he was the favorite son of Jacob. And Joseph, he had certain dreams. He dreamt at one point that he was in a field, and all the 7 stalks of field bowed down to his stalk. And when he told his dream to his brothers, they became so jealous and angry with him and said, are you going to rule over us? And Joseph, he had another dream where he said that he dreamt where the 11 stars, the sun and the moon, all bowed down to his star. And when he told his mother and father about it, they rebuked him and reprimanded him and saying that, are we going to come and bow down to you? And let me say this morning, God might have given you a dream. What is the dream that God has given to you? All of us, we have dreams and goals and ambitions. And it seems as if that when you want to pursue your dream, you are finding obstacles in the way. Even some of your own brethren are obstacles to your dreams. Just like Joseph's brothers were saying to him, are you going to rule over us? And they hated him the more. What dream do you have? What dream God has given to you? Do you see yourself as working in the house of the Lord for him? Do you see yourself as doing something spectacular for God? Don't give up on your dream this morning. You need to finish well. Finish strongly. Because Joseph, when he told his brothers about the dream, when he told his mother and father about the dreams, they rebuked him and reprimanded him. They said to him, are you going to rule over us? But God was planting in Joseph's heart something that was going to fulfill later on in life. Some of you, your children will come to you and they want to say they want to accomplish this. Don't discourage them on their dream. Encourage them. Let them know that God might have given them a dream. And walk along with them in their dreams. Encourage them. Pray over them. Seek the face of God with them. Let them recognize that nothing is impossible with God. Because just like Jesus Christ came as a babe, all of us were babies. We grew up into childhood and into adulthood, and we have dreams. Joseph, he had a dream. At one time, his father sent him to carry food for his brethren who were taking care of the sheep. And his brothers became so jealous of him. And they said, "Here comes the dreamer." And they decided that they are going to kill the dreamer. But then Reuben decided, "No, we're not going to kill him. He's our brother. He's our brethren." So they decided to put him into a pit. But then, when they realized that there were some Egyptians coming along, and they said, "Well, all right, we are going to sell him as a slave, going into Egypt." And they kill an animal. After Joseph, they sold him as a slave. And Joseph went along with the Egyptians. The brothers kill an animal, kill a sheep, and they dip the blood of the sheep in Joseph's clothes. And when they came home, they gave the story to their father that Joseph was dead. And they don't know where the body is, because they said that a wild animal might have taken Joseph. But as the scripture says that when Joseph came into Egypt, the Lord was with him. Despite you have your difficulties, your adversities, your problems, the Lord is with you. And it means that you must finish strong. You have to finish strong. And we read of the story where Joseph, he was taken in the house of Potiphar. And the Lord was with him. And when Potiphar saw that the favor of God was upon Joseph, just like the favor of God was upon Ruth, Potiphar left Joseph in charge of his household because he recognized that the favor of God was upon Joseph. And people of God, wherever God has placed you, may you serve there, and the favor of God will be upon you. Serve the Lord, even if you are having some difficult bosses, even if you have difficult people to work with. Do it as unto the Lord, not as men pleasers, because God is going to reward you. Sometimes we do things and we look for the praises of men. We look from the rewards of men. But God is taking note of what we do. And God is going to reward you. So it means that you must finish strong. And so we realize that the favor of God was upon him. And Potiphar's wife wanted to get Joseph into sin. But Joseph remembered what he was taught from home. Joseph remembered what he was taught while he was in the land of Egypt. And so as people of God, we have to teach our children well. We have to teach them the ways of God, that even when they are in a strange land, and even if they are far away from home, they can remember what they were taught. And Joseph remembered what he was taught. And so he escaped from Potiphar's wife. And he said, "How can I do this thing and sin against my God?" And it so happened that Joseph went to prison. I can just imagine that Joseph, at times, he felt so disappointed. He felt as if, God, where are you? What has happened to me? I am in prison now for something that I did not do. I did not do this, and I'm in prison. And sometimes you find yourself in situations that you did not deserve. But God has a purpose in all of it. God was refining Joseph, preparing him for the great day that will come upon him. And it so happened that the butler, the chief cook, had a dream. And he told Joseph his dream. And Joseph, by the Spirit of God, was able to interpret the dream for him. And he said that after 3 days, Pharaoh, the king, is going to restore you back to your position. And when you get out of prison, remember me. Put in a word for me. Say something to Pharaoh. And it so happened that the butler came out of prison, and the butler did not remember what Joseph asked him to do. Sometimes we wonder, people become ungrateful for us. But let me tell you, as people of God, let us not be ungrateful. Let us not be people of ingratitude. Just like when Jesus healed the 10 lepers, 9 went away, but 1 returned and said to Jesus, I remembered what you have done for me, and I come back to say thanks. The butler was let out of prison, and he did not remember Joseph. The baker also, he saw that when Joseph interpreted the dream for the butler, and he said, well, he told also his dream to Joseph, and he dreamt that he had 3 baskets of baked products, and the birds of the air came and ate it out, and he said that after 3 days, you're going to be hanged. And so it happened. And so Joseph, he was in prison for 2 more years. We don't know, the scriptures do not tell us how long did Joseph spend in prison. But whatever the time, the hand of God was upon Joseph. And it so happened that while he was in prison, the jailer, the prisoner, saw that the favor of God was upon him. And he left Joseph in charge of the prison. And let me say, people of God, wherever you are, let your work speak for you. Let your actions speak for you, because God is going to reward you. It so happened that after 2 years, Pharaoh had a dream, and he called all his wise men, all his advisors, all his soothsayers, and he told them the dream. And none of them could interpret that dream for him. And then the butler, he remembered Joseph. And he said to Pharaoh, I remembered when I was in prison, there was a young Hebrew man there. He interpreted, I had a dream, and he interpreted the dream for me. And Pharaoh said, send for him. So they hurriedly went to the prison and got Joseph ready to meet the king. Shaved up and what have you, changed his clothes, had to meet the king. And when Pharaoh said to Joseph that I had a dream, and I hear that you can interpret these dreams, Joseph said to him that I am not the one who is going to interpret your dream. The Lord God is going to interpret your dream. And so Pharaoh told Joseph the dream, said that he was in a dream, and he was in a field, and the field had some prosperous wheat thereby. And then he looked and said that another field, and the lean ones came and ate up the prosperous one. And he had a second dream where he saw some cows, and these cows were very fat and very well looking. And some slim one came and ate up the fat cows. And even after that, they were still lean. And the Spirit of God moved upon Joseph and said, the Lord is going to reveal the meaning of the dream. And he said that both dreams are one. There's going to be 7 years of harvest, of plentiful, and 7 years of drought. So during the 7 years of prosperity, store up all the grain that you can. Store up all the food that you can. And so that when the 7 years of famine come, we have enough food. But Joseph, he didn't say to himself, Joseph said to Pharaoh, what you should do, look for men, look out for men, and put them in charge of this project, of this program. And then the Pharaoh, the king, said to them, turn, who can we find in the land of Egypt where the Spirit of God dwelleth? Who can we find? And Pharaoh turned to Joseph and said, you are going to be in charge. This is the time that Joseph's dreams came to pass. Joseph finished strongly, and Joseph, God rewarded him. Let me say, people of God, whatever you might be going through, whatever situation you might be facing, remain strong, finish strong, because God is going to reward you. And because of that, Joseph was able to save a nation from starvation. Joseph was able to save a nation from starvation. And just here another quick point here, because let me say that as people of God, young people and everyone else, when you come to God, whatever dream God has given to you, wait on the Lord. Because it said that Joseph had to wait about 17 years before his dreams actually came true. When you look at the story of David, David was anointed by Samuel, and David had to wait 25 years before he ascended the throne. And as people of God, let us recognize that the church does not operate like the world. The world wants to see things happen quickly. And if things are not happening quickly, they want to fire that person and put in somebody else. But the church of God does not operate that way. It takes time for your dreams to come true, because God has to do a work on the lives of people so that when His glory comes into their lives, they do not destroy themselves. And so, Joseph, he ended up in being next to Pharaoh, and God blessed his hand. It so happened that Jacob, the drought was so severe, and Jacob sent his sons down to Egypt because they had heard that there was food in Egypt. And the scripture says that when the Joseph brothers came to Egypt, they did not recognize Joseph, but Joseph recognized them. And, it was, if Joseph could have turned and exact revenge upon his brothers, but Joseph did not do that. The scripture says that Joseph turned to them and he spoke to them very roughly. And he said, "Where are you from?" He said that we are all one man's children. He said, "Who is your father and what and what?" And he said, "Well, send for Benjamin." And when the brothers left Egypt, they said that Joseph filled up their bags with corn, with food, and they did not take any money from them. And while they were on their way back, one of the brothers opened the bag and recognized that their money was intact. They had not taken any money from them. And he was so shocked, he was so frightened, because he would say that this man who spoke so strongly to them, he's going to come back and he's going to punish them. But he did not. So they went back to their father Jacob, and they told Jacob all that happened. And they said of this man who spoke roughly to them, and this man, he gave them food and would not take in any money. And it so happened that later on, they had to go back to Egypt. And at this time, they saw Joseph again and still did not recognize Joseph. And Joseph took them in the palace. Joseph gave them food to eat, change of raiment and what have you. And Joseph shocked them when he said to them, I am Joseph, your brother. Is my father alive? They were so all shocked. They could not believe that the brother that they had sold into slavery, who thought that they would never hear from them again, this man had become the governor of Egypt. Joseph finished strongly, and they were so surprised that even when they had to sit down and had to talk with Joseph, and Joseph said to them that you meant it for evil, but God meant it for good. God turned around that situation. Joseph was a slave. He was in prison, but God moved him out of prison into the palace. You might be in a situation where nobody seems to recognize you. Nobody seems to notice you. And you feel as if that nobody's going to ever recognize what you have done. But Joseph recognized that God was with him, and he was able to finish strongly. When his brothers recognized that he was the governor of Egypt, they had now to bow down before Joseph. God can take somebody, they can nobody, and make them into somebody. You might be going through your trials. You might be going through your difficulties now. And it seems so hard. It seems so long. It seems as if that there is no end in sight. But finish strongly this morning. You are called to finish strongly. Joseph finished strongly. And when the brothers returned and told their father Jacob that Joseph is now the ruler in Egypt, his father was so surprised. His father decided that I must now go and see my son in Egypt. Let me say, brethren, in spite of what has happened to you, things have not worked out the way you want them to work out. But as we are coming towards the end of 2024, we need to finish strongly. We need to finish strongly, because faithful is he that has called us. And so as the people of God this morning, let us recognize, even when you're at your lowest, even when Joseph was at his lowest, even when Naomi, Ruth were at their lowest, God was able to turn their situation around, and they finished strongly. You know, I have seen so many people, many times, they are in such difficulties, and they wonder, is God going to come through for you? And just at the point where they gave up, God came through for them. You might be wondering, Lord, when is my situation, when is my circumstance going to change? When am I going to get my breakthrough? When am I going to see the light of day? When is my night going to turn into light? Because as the psalmist says that, weeping may endure for a night, but joy cometh in the morning. And so, since joy is going to come in the morning, it behoves us that we have to finish strong. Even when the night seems so long, even when it seems as if that there's no end in sight, we must finish strongly. As here's a song which says that, though you pray and you pray, they that sow in tears shall reap in joy. They that sow in tears shall reap in joy, for God is on his throne. Though you pray and it seems that your heart will break, but they that sow in tears shall reap in joy. We as the people of God this morning, as the word of God comes to us, as we look at the life of Ruth and Naomi, we look at the life of Joseph, God came through for them. and they were able to finish strongly. You know, just like even when the children of Israel, even last week I was talking about it, when the children of Israel, when they saw the hand of God through Moses and how God delivered them from Egypt and through the Red Sea. And because they came upon a little problem, there was no water in the wilderness. They turned from God and they murmured against God and Moses. Let us not be like the stubborn children of Israel. Even when we see difficulties and it seems that there is no end in sight, remember what God has done for you in the past. Every one of us, we have a testimony of what God has done. Joseph remembered what God has done for him in the past. And because of that, that was able to sustain him while he was in prison. Naomi remembered what God did for her when she was in the land of Israel. And even when she went to Moab and her husband died, her 2 sons died, and she came back, and it seemed that she was so bitter. Yet she had to recognize what God did for us. Sometimes you might be feeling so resentful and bitter towards God. But Naomi, she must have purpose in her heart and remembered what God has done for her. And she must have said, Lord, forgive me, because you have done great things for us. Great things for us. And so, because they finished strongly, God rewarded them. Let me say this morning, you might be going through, I don't know what your situation might be, but whatever you're going through, purpose in your heart that you're going to finish strongly. Purpose in your heart that in spite of what is happening, like the 3 Hebrew boys, the purpose in their heart that they are going to not bow down to any idol, but they are going to follow God. And because of that, God delivered them from the fire. Because of that, God delivered them from the furnace. And so as people of God, as we purpose in our hearts, like Joseph, like Ruth, and like Naomi, God came through for them. And God, the God that came through for Ruth, the God that came through for Naomi, the God that came through for Joseph, he can come through for us. And as we close this morning, as we reflect on what God has done for you in your life, even this year, there's something that he has done for you. There's something that he might has done for you. Reflect back on that this morning. And as we stand, we're going to